Today, we're going to explore a completely new way of thinking about sound. We're not just talking about what we hear, but what sound is as a physical thing, a structure, and how that structure can either energize us or, quietly wear us down. Have you ever felt this? You're listening to something, music, a podcast, whatever, and after a while you just feel drained. A little bit of mental fog. It's not that it's too loud or that you don't like it. It's something else, right? A kind of hidden stress inside the sound itself. And for the very first time, we might actually have a way to measure it. So here's the game plan. First, we're going to unpack why it's always been so hard to pin down what good sound even means. Then we'll introduce a totally new way to measure it by literally stress testing sound waves. After that, we'll dive into a really fascinating experiment on the whole 432 Hertz debate. And finally, we'll talk about how all this could lead to a new index for better audio and let us consciously design our sonic future. All right, so section 1, the problem of sound. We've been trying to define good sound quality for 100 years, but the answer has always been, kind of fuzzy. For decades, we've basically been stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, you've got subjective taste. I like this, you don't. It's personal, you can't build a standard on that. On the other hand, you have all these technical specs, things like total harmonic distortion. They're objective, sure, but they don't really tell the whole story of how sound affects our brains. So this research asks a totally different question. What if, instead of asking if we like a sound, we ask how structurally stable the sound wave itself is? And that brings us right into section 2. This is where we shift our whole way of thinking, moving away from personal preference and diving straight into the world of physics. The key idea here is something called acoustic stability, and I love the analogy they use. Think of a sound wave not just as a sound, but as a physical structure, like a bridge. What this new protocol does is act like an engineer. It applies stress to that bridge, that sound wave, to find the exact point where it cracks and breaks. So how in the world do you actually stress test a sound wave? Well, section 3 covers the 2 really clever methods these researchers came up with to find that exact breaking point. First up is the energy test. It's super direct. You take a perfectly clean digital tone and you just start pumping more and more energy into it. Think of it like turning up the gain in microscopic steps. You keep pushing it until the wave just can't take it anymore, and its clean shape collapses into noisy distortion. That exact tipping point, that's its energy resistance score. It's a measure of its pure, raw strength. This second method is the timing test, and this one is all about how a sound handles tiny echoes. You know how if you clap in a small bathroom, the echo is so fast your brain just hears one single, richer clap, but if you clap near a canyon wall, you clearly hear 2 separate claps. This test finds that exact tipping point, down to the millisecond, where our brain switches from hearing one coherent sound to hearing 2 separate ones. That gives you its timing tolerance, basically how well it holds itself together over time. Okay. And now for section 4. This is where things get really interesting. The researchers took these brand new stress tests and applied them to one of the biggest, longest-running debates in the audio world, the standard 440 Hz tuning versus the mythical 432 Hz. And wow, the results from the energy test were pretty shocking. The 432 Hz tone could handle almost 13% more energy before it broke down. To use our bridge analogy, it was just a stronger, more stable structure than the 440 Hz tone. Plain and simple. And the timing test showed the exact same thing. The 432 Hz tone gave the brain a 14.5% larger window of time to process it as a single sound. It was more resilient. It could handle more timing errors before falling apart. So it wasn't just physically stronger, it was also more coherent over time. But here's the million-dollar question, right? Who cares if it's stronger? Does any of this physical stuff actually make a difference to us? Well, a double-blind study with actual human listeners gave a stunning answer. After listening for just 5 minutes, the 432 Hz tone, the one that was physically more stable, caused over 21% less reported cognitive fatigue. The physical strength of the sound wave directly translated to an easier, less tiring experience for our brains. And this slide right here, this is the real aha moment of the whole thing. You have 3 totally different kinds of measurements. One is pure physics, how strong is the wave? One is psychoacoustics, how does our brain perceive it? And one is just asking people how they feel. And all 3 point in the exact same direction. The sound that's physically more stable is also the sound that feels less tiring. It's an incredible connection.
So let's zoom out in section 5 and talk about why this isn't just a cool lab experiment. With everything going on in our world, especially with the explosion of AI, the timing of this is absolutely crucial.
I mean, really think about this. Generative AI is creating, at this very moment, the voices, the music, the sound effects, the entire soundscape of our future. And it's being trained on decades of audio that was all based on a standard that might be, well, fundamentally stressful. We are at risk of hard-coding cognitive fatigue into everything we're going to hear for decades to come. So what's the fix? The idea is to create a new standard. It's called the Acoustic Coherence Index, or ICA. Just imagine a single, easy-to-understand score, kind of like an energy efficiency rating on your fridge, that tells you how stable and how easy on your brain a piece of audio is. And you could use this everywhere. Streaming services could have a little badge for certified low-fatigue audio. AI companies could train their voice models to get the highest score. We could design the little pings and notifications on our phones, the sounds in our hospitals, and even the acoustics in our schools to be measurably better for our brains. And that brings us to our last section, our sonic future by design. Because what this all boils down to is that for the first time in history, we actually have a choice to make about the sound that surrounds us. This quote from the paper just says it all, doesn't it? The 440 Hertz standard we all use wasn't picked because it was the best for humans. It was just convenient for making instruments back in the day. Nobody ever asked the question, what's actually best for our brains, because they had no way to answer it. But the thing is, now we do. So this is the big question we're left with. As AI starts to generate the soundtrack of our entire lives, from the music we stream to the voices on our GPS, are we going to be intentional about it? Are we going to use this incredible new science to design a sonic world that's actually built for human well-being by choice? Or are we just going to stick with the default setting, one that we inherited by a simple accident of history? The tools are finally here. The choice is now ours.